The first thing Marcus noticed was the silence, not the peaceful kind that wrapped around you like a warm blanket, but the hollow absence that made your ears strain for something, anything to fill the void. His boots crunched against fallen pine needles as he adjusted the weight of his camera gear, the sound unnaturally sharp in the still air. "You feel that?" Sarah's voice carried from a few feet ahead, barely above a whisper. She held her acoustic monitoring equipment at chest level, frowning at the display. "The baseline readings are off." Marcus lifted his Nikon, focusing on how the late afternoon sun filtered through the dense canopy above. The fog had started rolling in earlier than expected, creating ethereal shapes between the towering pines. Perfect for atmospheric shots, but something about the way it moved made his skin prickle. "Off how?" Jake asked, fumbling with a tangle of cables connected to their portable recording station. The kid had been jumpy since they'd lost cell service 3 miles back. Sarah shook her head, her graying temples catching the fading light. "It's like there's a frequency just below what we can hear, a subsonic hum that shouldn't be here." She adjusted a dial, her brow furrowing deeper. "And it's getting stronger." Danny emerged from the tree line, her ranger uniform blending with the darkening shadows. "Found a good spot to set up camp about a quarter-mile ahead. High ground, clear sightlines." She paused, nostrils flaring slightly. "Anyone else smell that?" Marcus inhaled deeply. Beyond the expected sense of pine sap and damp earth was something metallic, like old pennies left in the rain. "Probably just mineral deposits," Officer Collins offered, but his hand unconsciously drifted toward his holstered sidearm. "This whole area's got a weird geological makeup. That's why you science folks are out here, right?" Sarah nodded absently, still focused on her readings. The acoustic anomalies were first reported 6 weeks ago, started with hikers complaining of headaches, disorientation. Then the animals began acting strange. "Strange how?" Marcus asked, snapping a photo of a cluster of dead birds he spotted beneath a fallen log. Their tiny bodies were twisted at unnatural angles. "They left," Danny said flatly. "All of them. No deer, no squirrels, not even insects. First time in 15 years I've seen these woods this empty." The fog continued to thicken as they made their way to the campsite. Marcus kept shooting, trying to capture the way it seemed to move against the wind, coiling around tree trunks like pale fingers. The light was failing faster than it should have, the shadows between the trees growing deeper, more absolute. They worked quickly to set up camp, 3 tents arranged in a triangle, Sarah's monitoring equipment stationed in the center. Jake got the generator running, and the soft hum of electricity pushed back against the unnatural quiet. But even that familiar sound seemed wrong somehow, distorted. "I'm getting something," Sarah announced as darkness settled fully around them. She'd connected her headphones to the main recording unit, her expression growing increasingly troubled. I've never seen a pattern like this." Before she could elaborate, a low vibration passed through the ground beneath their feet. Marcus felt it in his teeth, a resonance that made his fillings ache. The generator sputtered once, twice, then died. In the sudden darkness, Jake's nervous laugh seemed too loud. "Just a small tremor, right? This region gets them sometimes." "No," Danny said, her voice tight. "Not like this." The fog pressed closer, thick enough now to obscure the trees just beyond their camp's perimeter, and in that swirling whiteness, something moved, something vast. Sarah yanked off her headphones, face pale in the beam of Colin's flashlight. "We need to turn everything off, now." "Why?" Marcus asked, already reaching for his camera's power switch. "Because it's following the signals, and it's getting closer." The fog continued to curl inward, bringing with it that metallic smell, stronger now, like rust, like blood. And somewhere, just at the edge of hearing, a sound began to build. Not quite static, not quite a scream. Something was coming. The first crackle of static came from Sarah's equipment, a harsh burst that made them all flinch. Marcus watched through his viewfinder. She frantically disconnected cables, her movements sharp with barely contained panic. "Sarah?" Jake's voice cracked. "What exactly did you hear?" She shook her head, hands trembling as she shoved equipment into waterproof cases. "It wasn't natural, like someone took an air raid siren and..." She stopped, swallowing hard. "We need to pack up, now." The fog had become a living thing, writhing between the trees in patterns that defied physics. Marcus tried to capture it on camera, but every shot came back distorted, riddled with digital artifacts he'd never seen before. "There," Collins whispered, his flashlight beam cutting through the mist. About 50 feet out, a tree swayed, then another, and another. Something was moving through the forest, something big enough to disturb the canopy. Crack! The sound of splintering wood echoed through the clearing. Marcus's finger instinctively pressed the shutter, capturing the moment a massive pine toppled, its 100-foot trunk snapping like a matchstick. Inside the tent, Danny ordered, her ranger training taking over. No lights, no sound. They scattered, adrenaline overriding any argument. Marcus found himself crammed into the largest tent with Sarah and Jake, their breathing too loud in the confined space. Through the half-open zipper, he kept his camera ready. The ground trembled. Not like before, this was the impact of something massive moving with deliberate steps. The metallic smell grew overwhelming, coating the back of their throats. "Oh God," Jake whimpered, pointing. Above the tree line, barely visible through the fog and gathering darkness, something rose. Marcus's mind struggled to process its dimensions. 20 feet, 30, higher. The thing's head, if you could call it that, was a twisted mass of rusted metal, air raid sirens grafted onto a skull-like framework of corroded steel and exposed wiring. Sarah's hand clamped over Jake's mouth, stifling his scream. The creature's head swiveled, sirens rotating like grotesque ears searching for sound. Its neck was impossibly long, vertebrae the size of oil drums visible through decomposing flesh. Marcus's camera whirred softly as it tried to focus. The sound was barely audible to human ears, but the effect was immediate. The entity's head snapped toward their tent, sirens adjusting like radar dishes. Then it began to broadcast. The signal started as pure static, but quickly evolved into something worse, a sound that existed in the space between frequencies. Marcus felt blood trickle from his nose. Beside him, Jake convulsed, eyes rolling back. Through tears of pain, Marcus saw Danny emerge from her tent, hands pressed against her ears. She was shouting something, trying to draw the creature's attention away from them. The broadcast changed. Layered within the static came fragments of sound, air raid warnings, emergency broadcasts, human screams distorted into unrecognizable frequencies. The creature's entire body vibrated, emitting waves of sonic energy that made the air itself ripple. Colin's tent collapsed as he scrambled out, service weapon drawn. The gunshot was lost in the cacophony, but Marcus saw the muzzle flash. The bullet struck one of the sirens, producing a clear ping that cut through the static. Everything went silent. The creature's head rotated 180 degrees, focusing on Collins. The officer stood his ground, emptying his magazine into the thing's face. Each impact produced a new note, and Marcus realized with horror that the entity was learning, adapting the sounds into its broadcast. "Run," Banny breathed, pulling Jake's limp form toward the tent flap, while it's distracted. But as they moved, Marcus's camera, still running on autopilot, emitted a soft beep as it saved the last image. The sound was tiny, insignificant. The creature heard it. Its head swung back with impossible speed, sirens reconfiguring. And now, from deep within its metallic throat, came a new sound, a perfect mimicry of a camera's autofocus motor, amplified to reality-shattering volume. The last thing Marcus saw before the world dissolved into noise was the creature beginning to descend, its massive body finally emerging from the fog. What he saw made him wish it had stayed hidden. Above them, the sirens began to scream.
Sarah's ears were still ringing as they crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping their faces. Jake stumbled between them, barely conscious, his nose and ears leaving a trail of blood droplets that Marcus desperately wished they could conceal. The creature's broadcast pulsed behind them, each wave making the air ripple like heat distortion on summer asphalt. The sound had changed again. Now it was mimicking their panicked footsteps, but wrong, distorted, hungry. "The access road," Danny gasped, taking point. 2 miles east. My truck." A massive shape dropped from above, landing with enough force to knock them off their feet. Not the creature itself, but a tree it had casually tossed aside. The ancient pine blocked their path, its roots reaching towards the sky like grasping fingers. Collins helped Jake up, his empty gun still clutched in his other hand. "Around it, keep moving." But the fog was everywhere now, thick enough to taste. Marcus tried to orient himself using the dim glow of his camera's display, but the screen kept glitching, showing impossible images, faces in the static, coordinates that changed every second, altitude readings that made no sense. "Wait," Sarah wheezed, pressing her back against a tree trunk. "Listen." They froze. Through the omnipresent hum came a new sound, engine noise. Someone was on the access road. "Help!" Jake croaked, trying to shout. "Help!" Sarah clapped her hand over his mouth again. "No, it's not." She swallowed hard. "That's not a real engine." As if to confirm her words, the sound warped, stretching into something that only approximated a vehicle, like a child's impression of a car, all wrong notes and mechanical screams. "It's hunting us," Danny whispered, "using sounds to hurt us." Marcus checked his camera's GPS. The screen showed them 5,000 feet above sea level and climbing, impossible for their location. Every electronic device they had was malfunctioning, their compasses spinning wildly. A blast of static from their left sent them scrambling right. Another burst drove them forward. The fog parted just enough to reveal they were being pushed towards a steep ravine. "It's too smart," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "The frequencies it's using, it's not just mimicking sounds, it's..." A new noise cut through the chaos, a perfect reproduction of Sarah's voice from hours earlier. The baseline readings are off. The words echoed through the trees, overlapping until they became a chorus of Sarah's, each slightly more distorted than the last. They backed away from the sound only to hear another voice behind them, Jake's nervous laugh from the campsite, twisted into something that barely resembled human speech. "It's recorded everything," Collins realized. "Every sound we've made since we entered these woods." The fog swirled, and through it they caught glimpses of the creature's true form. Its body was a nightmare of organic and mechanical parts, flesh and rusted metal fused together in ways that violated natural law. As it moved, smaller sirens along its spine rotated and flexed like malformed limbs, each one broadcasting a different stolen sound. "There," Danny pointed, to a dark opening in the rock face, a cave entrance barely visible through the mist. "We can lose it underground." They ran for it, their footsteps echoing oddly on the stone. Marcus turned for one last photo, catching a glimpse of the creature's lower half, a mass of writhing cables and tendons that dragged along the ground, leaving trails of oxidized fluid that killed any vegetation it touched. The cave mouth loomed before them, promising shelter from the sonic assault. But as they reached the entrance, Sarah stopped dead in her tracks. "Do you smell that?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the creature's broadcast. The metallic scent was overwhelming here, and on the cave walls, barely visible in the dim light of Marcus's failing camera's display, were marks, hundreds of them. Claw marks, yes, but also, those are finger marks, human fingers, dragged downward. Behind them, the creature's broadcast shifted again. Now it was playing their conversation in real time, but with something else mixed in. Older recordings, other voices, screaming. "How many?" Marcus asked, though he already knew. "All of them," Sarah whispered. "Everyone who's gone missing in these woods. It's been collecting their sounds, building its library." The broadcast reached a crescendo, and in the cacophony they heard fragments of final moments, pleas for help, desperate prayers, the wet sounds of tearing flesh, all preserved and remixed into the creature's growing symphony of horror. They had a choice, the cave or the creature. Behind them, the massive form emerged from the fog, sirens rotating to focus on their position. As its head lowered towards them, they saw that the rust-colored stains on its metal surface weren't rust at all. And then in perfect clarity, the creature broadcast one final sound, Marcus's camera shutter, followed by his own voice from hours earlier. "You feel that?" The cave suddenly felt like the better option.
The beam from Colin's flashlight barely penetrated the darkness, creating more shadows than it banished. Water dripped somewhere in the depths, each drop echoing until it became impossible to tell distance or direction. Their ragged breathing bounced off limestone walls, coming back to them distorted. "Keep moving," Danny whispered, though they all knew sound was their enemy now. There might be another way out through the cave system. Marcus's camera screen provided additional light, though the display kept freezing on impossible images, frames of static that seemed to contain faces, coordinates that spelled out words in corrupted digits. The timestamp was stuck at 3:33, flickering no matter how many seconds passed. Jake stumbled, catching himself against the wall. His hand came away wet. "Please tell me that's water." Sarah aimed her light at the stone. The liquid was dark, oxidized. "It's not rust," she said softly. "These marks are fresh." Above them, through hundreds of feet of rock, they felt more than heard the creature's broadcast. The cave itself seemed to vibrate with subsonic frequencies that made their teeth ache and their vision blur. "Left or right?" Collins asked as they reached a fork in the tunnel. Before anyone could answer, they heard it, a sound that didn't belong in the cave's natural acoustic environment. A phone ringing. Not an electronic ringtone, but an old rotary phone's bell, echoing from the right-hand passage. "That's not possible," Jake whispered. "There's no signal down here, no power, no—" The ringing cut off mid-bell. Then, faintly, a voice. "Hello? Can anyone hear me? We're trapped down here, please." The voice was strange, like multiple recordings layered together, men and women speaking the same words almost in sync. And beneath it, almost too quiet to hear, the sound of something being dragged across stone. "Left," Danny said firmly. "Now." They moved as quickly as they dared, minimizing the sound of their footsteps. Marcus brought up the rear, documenting their path with his failing camera. Each photo showed more corruption, strange artifacts in the image, bursts of static that formed almost recognizable patterns. The temperature dropped steadily as they descended, their breath fogged in Colin's flashlight beam. The walls were slick with condensation and that dark fluid that definitely wasn't rust. And everywhere, those drag marks, fingers and claws and something else, something that left grooves in solid rock. Sarah stopped abruptly, causing a chain reaction of collisions and muffled curses. Listen. Through the omnipresent drip of water came a new sound, wind. Moving air meant another entrance. Hope flared briefly. Then they heard the voices again, closer now, multiple conversations overlapping. Did you hear that? It's following us. Please, we have to go back. The signal's getting stronger. Each voice was different, yet they shared something, a quality that suggested they'd been recorded, replayed, degraded through multiple generations like an old tape copied too many times. It's hurting us again, Sarah breathed, using their voices, their last words. A metallic screech echoed through the tunnel behind them, the sound of sirens rotating against stone. The creature was in the cave system, and it was learning to navigate by echolocation. They ran, no more attempt at stealth. Their footsteps thundered off the walls, and with each echo, the creature's broadcast changed, adapting, analyzing, hunting. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Colin's light revealed cave formations, stalactites and stalagmites creating a forest of stone, and everywhere, evidence of previous victims. Shredded backpacks, broken equipment, cameras like Marcus's, their memory cards torn out. There, Jake pointed, a vertical shaft where pale light filtered down. That has to lead to the surface. They were halfway across the chamber when Marcus's camera emitted its shutdown warning, a soft double beep that froze them in place. The creature's broadcast stopped. For 3 heartbeats, there was absolute silence. Then, the chamber exploded with sound. Every voice, every scream, every dying breath the creature had collected played simultaneously at frequencies that made blood vessels burst. Jake's nose started bleeding again. Sarah fell to her knees, hands pressed against her ears. Through the sonic assault, Marcus raised his camera one last time. The screen was solid static now, except for a single line of corrupted text. It sees through sound. The creature dropped from the shaft above, its massive form blocking their escape route. In the confined space, they finally saw it clearly. The sirens weren't attached to its head. They were its head, a writhing mass of speakers and horns that constantly reconfigured themselves. Its body was a patchwork of organic matter and scavenged metal, held together by pulsing tendrils that might have been wire or muscle or both. As it loomed over them, the sirens rotated in opposite directions, focusing on their group, and from deep within its mechanical throat came a sound they recognized, the click of Marcus's camera shutter, followed by their own screams from hours earlier. It had been saving their voices, adding them to its collection. The broadcast began again, and this time there was nowhere to run.
The creature's broadcast hit them like a physical force, driving them to their knees. Marcus felt his eardrums threatening to rupture as the sound shifted through impossible frequencies. Through streaming eyes, he saw Sarah crawling towards something half buried in the cave debris, the remains of her acoustic equipment. The entity's head twisted, sirens realigning. Its body was even more horrific in the confined space. What Marcus had thought were cables were actually tendons or nerves pulsing with bioluminescent fluid. They connected to patches of salvaged technology, old radios, fragments of cell phones, pieces of machinery that had no business being fused with living tissue. "The frequencies!" Sarah screamed over the cacophony, her hands working frantically with the broken equipment. "It's not random, it's a pattern!" The creature responded by mimicking her voice, distorting it through multiple sirens until it became a chorus of Sarahs, each speaking at a slightly different speed. Blood trickled from Collins's ears as he fired his backup weapon, the small .38 he kept in an ankle holster. The bullets sparked off metal and sank into flesh, but the entity showed no sign of pain. "Look!" Jake pointed to where the bullets had struck. Instead of blood or mechanical fluid, the wounds leaked static, visible waves of distortion that rippled through the air like heat waves.
The creature's broadcast shifted again, incorporating the gunshots into its symphony of stolen sounds. But now that Marcus was listening for it, he could hear what Sarah meant. There was a pattern to the chaos, a rhythm, a purpose. "It's not just collecting sounds," Sarah gasped, connecting frayed wires with trembling hands. "It's processing them, converting audio into energy somehow. The more it broadcasts, the stronger it gets." As if to demonstrate, the entity's flesh rippled. New sirens burst from its surface like malignant growths, each one adding to the overwhelming wall of sound. The cave walls cracked under the sonic assault. Danny grabbed a broken stalactite, hurling it with perfect aim. The makeshift spear lodged in one of the creature's primary sirens, producing a screech of tortured metal. The entity recoiled, its broadcast faltering for a crucial moment. "The resonance!" Sarah shouted. "Everything has a resonant frequency, the frequency that causes it to vibrate most intensely. Even this thing." Marcus understood. "You're saying we can destroy it with sound. If we can match its broadcast pattern, amplify it back." Sarah's hands flew over her jury-rigged equipment. "But I need more power." The creature recovered, its damaged siren twisting until it fell free. The wound leaked more visual static, creating a localized distortion in reality itself. Through that tear in normal space, Marcus caught a glimpse of somewhere else, somewhere wrong. "The generator!" Jake was already shrugging off his backpack. "I still have the portable backup!" The creature's head snapped toward the new sound, sirens rotating to track Jake as he scrambled toward Sarah. It broadcast his movements back at him, creating a devastating echo that made him stumble. Collins and Danny tried to distract it, spreading out to different corners of the chamber. The entity's neck stretched impossibly, sirens swiveling to track all targets at once. Its broadcast fragmented, each speaker playing a different collection of stolen sounds. Marcus raised his dead camera like a weapon, pressing the power button repeatedly. The artificial shutter sound was faint, but it drew the creature's attention. Through his viewfinder, he saw something that didn't translate to the human eye. Patterns in the static pouring from its wounds, mathematical sequences that hurt to look at. "Got it!" Jake connected the generator to Sarah's equipment. The device hummed to life, lights flickering as it drew power. The creature reared up, its full height barely contained by the cave's ceiling. Its broadcast reached new intensities, layering every sound it had ever collected into a reality-bending assault. Marcus saw Jake's nose bleeding again, saw Collins drop his gun as his hands spasmed. Sarah's fingers flew across her makeshift control panel. "I need to match the pattern exactly." The entity's head rotated 180 degrees, focusing all sirens on her position. It recognized the threat. As its neck coiled back like a striking snake, Marcus saw true purpose in its movements for the first time. This wasn't just a predator. It was intelligent, ancient, patient. "Sarah!" He dove toward her as the creature struck, its sirens reconfiguring into something like a mouth. His camera caught one final image, the inside of that mechanical maw, where speakers and flesh merged into impossible geometries. Sarah slammed her hand down on the makeshift broadcast trigger. The sound that erupted from her equipment was like nothing Marcus had ever heard, and yet it was familiar. It was their own voices, their screams, their footsteps, all the sounds the creature had collected, but reversed, inverted, turned against their collector. The entity recoiled as if struck. Its own broadcast wavered, trying to adapt. For a moment, the two signals clashed, creating standing waves that made reality itself vibrate. Then Sarah adjusted something, and the patterns aligned. The creature's resonant frequency. The cave erupted in chaos.
The creature's scream transcended sound. It was pure energy, a frequency that existed somewhere between matter and void. Marcus watched through kaleidoscoping vision as the entity's form began to destabilize, its flesh rippling like static on an analog TV. But Sarah's equipment was failing. Smoke poured from improvised connections as the generator strained against laws of physics it was never meant to challenge. The creature's own broadcast adapted, shifting to escape its resonant frequency. "Hold it!" Sarah's hands danced across her controls, blood streaming from her nose. "I can't maintain the pattern." The entity's head snapped and twisted, sirens rotating independently as it tried to break free of the sonic feedback loop.
Its body pulsed with bioluminescent waves that cast strange shadows on the cave walls, shadows that moved wrong, that showed shapes that couldn't exist in three-dimensional space. "The generator!" Jake lunged for the sputtering power source. "It's overheating!" Collins and Danny worked to brace Sarah's equipment, using debris from the cave floor to stabilize the failing setup. Marcus could see the strain in their bodies as they fought against the physical force of the competing sound waves. The creature's broadcast changed again, becoming something deeper, more primal. It wasn't just playing back recordings anymore. It was reaching into its oldest memories, producing sounds that made Marcus's hindbrain scream in recognition. The hunting calls of extinct predators, the grinding of tectonic plates, the first vibrations of Earth's cooling crust. "It's trying to drown us out," Sarah shouted over the reality-bending cacophony. "I need more power." Marcus looked at his camera, then at the graveyard of electronic devices scattered around the cave floor, the remnants of previous victims' equipment. An idea formed. "Batteries!" He scrambled toward the nearest cluster of broken cameras and phones. "Jake, help me!" They worked frantically, salvaging any power source that might still hold a charge. The creature's flesh continued to ripple and distort, tears in its surface leaking visual static into the air. Through those tears, Marcus caught glimpses of other places, other times, and things that moved in spaces between spaces. "Here!" Jake handed him a double fistful of batteries, their hands shaking from the subsonic frequencies filling the chamber. They fed the batteries into Sarah's jury-rigged array, replacing those that had already burned out. The generator's whine rose in pitch as the extra power kicked in. The creature recoiled, its broadcast faltering. More tears opened in its surface, leaking that reality-distorting static. But instead of weakening, it seemed to be changing, adapting. Its flesh flowed like mercury, sirens multiplying and reconfiguring into new patterns. "It's not enough," Sarah gasped, her voice raw. "I need more power." She never finished the sentence. The creature lashed out with a tendril of pure sound, knocking her away from the controls. The feedback loop wavered, giving the entity a moment to recover. Its head swung toward them with terrible purpose, sirens aligning into a tight array. The broadcast that followed was unlike anything before, not sound as they understood it, but pure information forced into their brains through their auditory nerves. Marcus's consciousness began to fragment. Beside him, Jake collapsed, blood streaming from his eyes. Collins fired his empty gun reflexively, the clicking of the hammer adding to the creature's growing symphony. Through the chaos, Marcus saw Sarah crawling back toward the controls, but the creature saw her too, its neck extended, sirens rotating to focus on her position. At this range, its broadcast would liquefy her brain. They needed more power, more sound, more... Marcus looked at his camera one last time, understanding flooding through his static-filled mind. Not just batteries, they needed... "Everything!" he screamed. "Phones, cameras, anything that makes sound, throw them in!" Danny understood first, pulling out her radio. Collins added his body cam. Jake, barely conscious, fumbled for his phone. The creature's broadcast reached its crescendo, reality buckling under the assault. Sarah's hand stretched toward the controls as the entity's head descended. Marcus hurled his camera directly in its path. The impact was minimal, but the sound of breaking electronics, amplified and twisted through the creature's own sirens, caused it to hesitate for a crucial second. Sarah's fingers found the controls. She turned everything up to maximum, and the cave dissolved into pure noise. The world became frequencies. Marcus couldn't tell if his eyes were open or closed. Everything was waves and patterns, reality stripped down to its component vibrations. The cave walls rippled like liquid, stone flowing into impossible geometries as competing sound waves tore physics apart. The creature thrashed in the center of the chaos, its form losing cohesion. The tears in its surface widened, leaking not just static now, but fragments of other places, other times. Through the gaps in its dissolving flesh, Marcus caught glimpses of vast, dark spaces where things moved in patterns that hurt to comprehend. Hold on!" Sarah's voice reached him as if through water, distorted and strange. She was still at the controls, blood streaming from her ears, her nose, her eyes. The equipment around her was melting, components liquefying as they pushed beyond their physical limits. Jake lay unconscious, protected only by Danny's body, as she curved over him. Collins had wedged himself into a corner, hands pressed against his ears so hard his knuckles were white. The sound was everywhere, inescapable, a physical force that threatened to tear them apart at the molecular level. The creature's broadcast changed again, but this time it wasn't adapting, it was breaking down. Its collected sounds began playing at random, fragments of voices and screams and mechanical noises overlapping into chaos. The sirens on its head rotated independently, some tearing free to clatter against the cave floor. "Sarah!" Marcus tried to crawl toward her, but the competing frequencies had turned gravity fluid. "You have to stop! The cave is coming down!" Cracks spread across the ceiling like lightning, stones falling into the maelstrom of sound. But Sarah didn't move from the controls. Her eyes were fixed on the creature, watching as it began to unravel. The entity's flesh flowed like mercury, unable to maintain solid form. More tears opened in its surface, and through them Marcus saw everything, all the places it had been, all the sounds it had collected. Ancient cities, dead worlds, spaces between dimensions where sound existed as pure geometry. "It's not just dying," Sarah shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "It's coming apart. All of it, everything it's absorbed, everything it's recorded, it's all breaking free." As if to confirm her words, voices began pouring from the creature's dissolving form. Not recordings now, but the actual voices, the stolen sounds returning to their original frequencies. Marcus heard snatches of conversations, final screams, fragments of lives the entity had consumed over what must have been centuries. The cave ceiling cracked again, larger chunks falling now. The creature's mass shifted and flowed, its mechanical components separating from organic matter. Sirens fell like dead leaves, their metal surfaces corroding in fast motion. "We have to go!" Collins grabbed Sarah's arm, trying to pull her away from the controls. "Now!" But she resisted, her hands still moving across the makeshift panel. "Not yet! If we stop now, it'll recover! We have to—" The rest of her words were lost as the creature made one final attempt to fight back. Its remaining sirens aligned, focusing all its power on Sarah's position. The broadcast that followed wasn't sound anymore. It was pure information, raw data forced directly into their brains. Marcus saw Sarah's body go rigid as the signal hit her. Her eyes rolled back, showing only whites. Blood poured from her ears in steady streams. But her hands never left the controls. The creature's form collapsed entirely, its flesh dissolving into pools of mercury-like liquid that flowed with impossible patterns. The tears in its surface widened into gaping holes in reality itself, each one leaking fragments of other times, other places. And through those holes, something else began to emerge, something vast, ancient, the source of all the creature's stolen sounds. The cave ceiling gave way completely. Marcus lunged for Sarah as tons of rock began to fall. He saw Collins and Danny dragging Jake toward the tunnel entrance, saw the creature's remains flowing into patterns that hurt his eyes, saw things reaching through the tears in reality. Sarah's fingers finally slipped from the controls as he pulled her away, the equipment, already failing, crushed under the falling stone. The last thing Marcus heard before the cave collapsed entirely was a sound he would never be able to describe, the death cry of something that had existed between frequencies since sound itself began. Then there was only the roar of falling rock, and finally, silence.
Marcus woke to the taste of limestone dust and copper. Pale morning light filtered through gaps in the cave-in, creating shafts that illuminated swirling particles in the air. His ears rang with a high-pitched whine that made it hard to focus. "Sarah?" His voice sounded wrong, distant. "Anyone?" Movement to his left, Danny emerging from behind a fallen boulder, her ranger uniform caked with gray dust and darker stains. She pointed to where Collins was checking Jake's pulse. The kid was alive, but unconscious. Sarah lay crumpled near the remains of her equipment, blood drying on her face.
As Marcus crawled to her, her eyes fluttered open. "Did we?" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Look," Colin said softly, gesturing toward the cave's center. Where the creature had been, there was nothing. No flesh, no metal, no sirens. Just a perfect circle of smooth stone, as if that section of cave floor had been erased from reality. The air above it shimmered slightly, like heat waves rising from hot asphalt. "Help me up," Sarah whispered. Her hands shook as Marcus and Danny lifted her. "We need to check." She stumbled toward the circle, pulling a small device from her pocket, a simple frequency meter, somehow still functioning. As she held it over the smooth stone, the display flickered between impossible numbers before settling on all zeros. "Dead air. Complete silence. That shouldn't be possible in nature." Jake groaned, finally regaining consciousness. "Did anyone get the license plate of whatever hit me?" "Can you walk?" Collins asked, helping him sit up. "We need to move. That cave-in doesn't look stable." They made their way carefully toward the tunnel entrance, supporting each other over the debris. Marcus noticed they all kept glancing back at that perfect circle of smooth stone, as if it expected to change, to move, to reveal something they'd missed. The journey out of the cave system was a blur of wrong turns and false starts, but eventually they saw daylight. They emerged into a forest transformed by morning sun. No fog, no strange metallic smell, just birds singing and wind in the trees. Sarah's frequency meter beeped softly. "Normal background noise," she reported. "Everything's normal." But they all knew that wasn't quite true. Their hearing was damaged, maybe permanently, in ways that went beyond physical injury. They could still feel phantom vibrations in their teeth, still sense echoes of frequencies that shouldn't exist. "The others," Jake said suddenly. "All those voices we heard at the end, all those people it took. Did we set them free?" Sarah finished. "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe we just..." She trailed off, staring at nothing. Marcus reached for his camera out of habit, then remembered it was gone, sacrificed in that final confrontation. But maybe that was for the best. Some things weren't meant to be recorded. They made their way back to the access road in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Danny's truck was where they'd left it, untouched. As they climbed in, Marcus noticed Sarah writing something in a small notebook. "What are you doing?" "Frequencies," Sarah said. "Trying to remember the pattern we used. In case..." "In case what?" She looked up at him, her eyes haunted. "In case it wasn't the only one." The truck's engine turned over, the sound making them all flinch. As they drove away, Marcus watched the forest recede in the side mirror. Just before it disappeared from view, he thought he saw something, a ripple in the air, a distortion like heat waves rising from the cave entrance, and for a moment, just at the edge of hearing, he thought he heard... But no, that was impossible. They destroyed it. Hadn't they? Sarah's frequency meter lay silent on the dashboard. Its display showed all zeros except the last digit, which flickered once, briefly, to a 1. Then, back to 0. Silence.